Welcome to BatShit, a frank and funny look at living with mental illness.
While we'll touch on several illnesses, BatShit is focused on those along the spectrum of bipolar disorders. I'm your host, Adam.
And I'm your other host, Brad.
And we're both bipolar. So strap in and let's see how batshit we really are.
Spoiler alert, pretty damn batshit. This episode's topic, perinatal and postpartum depression.
Which we are aficionados on.
We are.
We're very informed on this, but we did decide it might be good to bring in another point of view.
I still disagree, but no, I'd like to welcome to the podcast one of my oldest and dearest friends, Maggie Gwin.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so
today.
much for joining us.
Absolutely.
When we started the podcast, we said initially, like, we want to talk about other elements of this mental illness spectrum. You know what I mean? And when Brad told me that you were willing to come on and talk about your experience, I mean, I can't say thank you enough.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the thing with postpartum depression and perinatal depression, any sort of depression and anxiety related towards pregnancy and childbirth, there's such a stigma around experiencing any of that you have a baby and you're supposed to be filled with joy and bliss and it's the most magical time of your life, and if you feel anything other than that, there's a lot of shame. And our society, I think, is finally realizing we need to talk about these things and realize that more often than not, the women that are around you that have just had babies are probably struggling.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Now, can I ask you, when did you start experiencing symptoms?
Well, okay, so I want to say this too, before I go on, I am not a doctor. I am not a trained psychologist.
No one here thinks, no one who listens to this, no. We're gonna...
If you're listening to this podcast by now and thinking that we, in any way, shape, or form, know what we're talking about, you're pretty dumb.
And you need to seek help. You should seek help.
You should seek help. You should see. Maybe it's delusional.
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
I've
it's
got
delusional.
a phone number for you. But no, so everything that I am about to say is purely topical and
course.
from friends and people that I have talked about this stuff with. So when I have two children. I have a boy and a girl, and my boy is 6, my girl is 4. So I was pregnant with the boy, had a decently difficult pregnancy, first trimester, not fun. What they don't tell you when you're pregnant is like, it's like somebody tells you, hey, Brad, like, you're about to be in a car wreck in 9 months. Do you want to finish your chip?
It's okay.
Sorry. Consummate professional,ism. Brad Hodson, everybody.
I constantly. You can, if you listen closely on every episode, you can hear me eating.
He's the Brad Pitt of podcasting.
Yeah.
Somebody who has misophonia has just turned this off, by the way. So I forgot, what was I even saying?
You were saying it's like if someone told me I was going to be in a
Oh,
car
okay.
wreck.
Hey, guess what? In 9 months, you're about to be in a car wreck.
Are you
okay?
psychic?
Yes, you're going to be in a car wreck. Now, you're going to have injuries. Like, no matter what, you're going to have injuries, okay? Mm-hmm. And it's going to be traumatic to some degree, like this car wreck. Even though it's not that bad, you're going to have traumatic injuries that are at least going to take 3 weeks to heal. But guess what? You might be having a normal car wreck, just your average run-of-the-mill car wreck, and then somebody just like T-bones you, and it's become a major car wreck, and you're going to need major surgery, and it's going to take over 6 weeks to heal from, and you might not be able to jump up and down or laugh without peeing yourself after this car wreck.
Yeah.
The women will understand. I just said. You guys are like, what?
No, I'm following.
Yeah, I get it.
So, like, imagine you go through this traumatic thing and people don't give childbirth the trauma that it is due.
Yeah.
Even a good childbirth is traumatic.
Oh, sure.
I was in the room for the birth of all my children, all 12.
Yeah, right. He's only got 2 left.
Yeah. God knows where the other ones went.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah. If you find them out there, they have my address tattooed on their foreheads. Just please, you can take them to the post office. Postage is prepaid. Scan the barcode on the back of their neck. No, so I was in the room when my kids were born, and it's a horribly traumatic experience. When Wyatt was born, my oldest son, Shannon, we had done hypno-birthing classes.
Ooh.
I did that as well.
Wait, what is hypno-birthing?
So the idea is that you can avoid any kind of drugs or anything, and you basically put yourself into hypnotic states.
Oh, okay.
To have a pain-free birth.
Pain-free, really?
I'm
Yeah, but how'd that work out?
quotations, though.
So for Shannon, that worked for about 20 hours.
Okay. That's
a
impressive.
In a 28-hour labor.
Ooh.
And those last 8 hours, she was still gunning for it. And I was the one following her around. I was like, babe, just please take the drugs. Take the drugs.
God
take
bless
a drug.
her.
I can't watch
God bless
this.
her.
I can't watch this anymore.
Did it work for you?
Not for the first one.
Okay.
I mean, I used some of the things that I learned in it. You really learn this wonderful breathing technique that I use even to this day for different things. But no, I did not have a typical hypnobirth because you can't control your birth. Your baby controls your birth.
Right, totally.
You know what I mean? Unless your doctor says you are going to have a C-section, your kid's breech, then you can control it. But like,
Which, God, talk about trauma there.
talk about
man.
trauma. I mean, but
I don't think people understand what a C-section is. You are cut in half.
Yeah.
You're basically the woman in the box at a magician show.
yeah.
You know?
And you're totally conscious, and then afterwards they're like, here's a baby, and your stomach is splayed open still.
God.
Yeah. And so it didn't work with him. I ended up getting an epidural, and I was one push away from getting a C-section. They were rolling the carts in, and luckily I got him out without the C-section, which I'm very grateful for. But it was traumatic, and people don't realize that just a normal run-of-the-mill birth even is still traumatic. And I even feel shame saying that like the birth of my children was traumatic because
because
people
we talk
put
about
trauma as bad.
Right.
But it's not necessarily bad, you know? It's just like it's a very intense thing physiologically and psychologically that you go through for, you know, however long, 3 hours to 28 hours like Shannon.
Yeah. Well, and people talk about the miracle of birth, and it's this wonderful golden miracle thing, and like you see it in the movies, and it's like funny. Women are cussing their husbands, and then the baby comes, and everybody's like, "Oh!"
Yeah.
And that's not what it is. at
No.
all. It's a nurse screaming at you, "Grab her leg! Grab her leg!" And you're throwing it up on your shoulder, and you're like, "Am I going to break her hip?" And she's like, "I don't care. Pull it back." And then this thing comes. It's like it looks like an alien with its little purple dome coming out of the vagina. And I'm traumatized, honestly, having watched it.
I mean, but it is natural. And so that's the thing with the hypno-birthing. I loved the class, but there were things about it that I did feel shame. You felt like bad if you were going to choose to end up getting your epidural, if you were going to try to go for and we call it a medication-free birth. Please don't call it a natural birth for the love of everything. Because then you are saying that if you had a C-section or if you had drugs, that it is unnatural.
Right.
And
That you somehow failed.
every birth is a natural birth, okay? Just say unmedicated.
You know what's interesting on that note? The United States of America has the highest maternal mortality rate of all developed nations in the world.
Yep.
More mothers die giving birth here in the United States than in any other developed country by a wide margin. I don't know why that is. Those of you out there who are interested can look into it more, but I find that very interesting. So when you talk about trauma also,
Yeah.
you know, not to mention the other things, like you said, peeing yourself, like, you know, you can do all this horrible stuff to your bladder. So you're already going into this. Any woman who's educated themselves being like, oh, there's 1,000 horrible things that can happen.
Yeah.
Which one's going to happen to me?
Yeah.
And so let's go back to the car wreck analogy.
Right.
All right. So you get to live for 9 months feeling like you ran a marathon every day of exhaustion and maybe wanting to throw up all the time and
Heartburn
and insomnia and all of the things. And then add on top of that the anxiety of what you just discussed of like, well, I wonder when that wreck's going to happen. I wonder how it's going to happen. I wonder if I'm going to be on the highway or am I going to be, in the parking lot of Target? Like, you don't know. There's so many unknowns. And if you pair that with a specific type of person, too, that might be prone to anxiety, It is just a tailspin. And, for me, I believe a lot of my stuff started when I was pregnant because trying to have control over that situation. You have no control over it. And so you're just trying to control what you can, every variable. So then when my son was finally born, for me, this is my own belief about postpartum depression and anxiety. It's like, yes, there is a hormonal thing, but I think it begins much earlier than before you have the child. Like I believe that things are ruminating, and then you have the baby, and if your hormones and your chemicals and your brain are set up, you're gonna go there. You can go there. I have friends that had crazy anxiety before they got pregnant. Then they were pregnant, they were crazy anxious then, and then their postpartum anxiety was debilitating. And people don't talk about postpartum anxiety either. It is these intrusive thoughts that your baby's gonna die. It's you're holding your baby up on a balcony, and you're on the second floor of a building, and then you have this vision of the baby like falling off the balcony for no reason, and you don't know how to control it. And luckily,
it's hard to get people who don't have children to understand that also, because the bond you have with a child, and I'm even talking as a father, like if you push this thing out your vagina, it's going to be even more so. By this thing, I mean a baby. You may push other things out, but we're talking about babies. But this connection and this love and this something clicks in your brain that you have to protect this thing with every fiber of your being. And now you start having these thoughts, this baby's going to die.
Yeah. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. Luckily, I didn't deal with the anxiety as much. I have friends that have, though. So that's where I've learned about that particular issue. But more of on the depression route, after you have this baby, after you've gone through this car wreck, you have the car wreck, but you have this beautiful baby. So you're happy. But then you've also got these injuries that you're trying to heal from. And then you're sleep deprived. I mean, anybody that's gone through extreme sleep deprivation, and I mean, you guys have talked about that, about having insomnia.
Sure.
Just imagine that just not stopping and you don't get a break, and it never, ever, ever, ever ends. Yeah. It can make you feel crazy. Like I would have mornings, especially where you feel this just buzzing in your head that just never, never stops. And it's really hard. It's really hard for you, for your partner, for the people around you to know how do you manage this? Like, what do I do? What do we do? And so I honestly was never diagnosed with postpartum depression. And that's why I wanted to come and talk about it with you guys today, was because I realized that I had it once I had once I started COVID. So once I began COVID.
I've been thinking about starting.
I was wondering who started it. It was you. It was you who started it.
I started it.
Was,
remember that March?
Damn it, Maggie.
I thought it was a bat. All right.
Once I started COVID.
Sorry about all that COVID, guys.
It was on us.
My anxiety and depression was so debilitating that I finally sought help. And I finally went to a psychiatrist, and they put me on Lexapro. They said, oh, you've just got situational anxiety because of COVID. And I got on the medication, and I was like, nope, mama's been feeling this way since that baby came out. And that's when I didn't realize how bad I felt until I felt better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't know how unhappy you are until you feel happy again.
Yeah. We talked about how, using the Lamictal that we use, the bottoms get less deep and the highs get less high, right? So when you are in a state of depression, you don't get as deep as you used to go. You still get depressed, but you don't, hit the very bottom of the well, so to speak.
No.
And so when I got on the medication for bipolar, that's just it. You're like, oh, I don't have to feel this bad. I don't have to feel this bad. And that's life-changing, right? Because you're like, well, how long have I been living with this way down here when I haven't had to?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So let me ask you, because your partner and you, right? You and your partner? You and your partner. You and your partner. Obviously, during COVID, I assume, you guys had conversations. Eventually, it led to you seeking help. Was it during the first your son and then your daughter.
So I skipped over a beat there. After I had my son, I knew that I wasn't great. Oh, this was the other thing I wanted to say, is that you have a new baby, you're sleep deprived, your whole world is upside down. You are having an identity crisis between whatever your career was and trying to manage your career plus becoming a mother. And it's just hard, and you don't know. Like, I guess this is just what it's like being a new mom. This is just what being a new mom is like. Everybody's going through this. Everyone's going through this. And some of them probably are, but we don't know. You know, like, is this normal? Is this not? What's normal? And then I got pregnant with my daughter when my son was 13 months old. And I then knew for sure that I was not okay. And I had experienced perinatal depression, which a lot of people don't know what it is. It's depression while you are pregnant. Because, I mean, your hormones are all over the place. Sure. I was still breastfeeding my son while I was pregnant. Once I stopped doing that, that also helped my hormones even out. But it was dark for the first 3 months of that pregnancy. Very, very dark. And a lot of people, I didn't seek help then. I mean, I think I was maybe I wasn't seeing a therapist because I had no time because I was taking care of a baby.
13-month-old kid, yeah.
I mean, like, that's the thing. You can't do all the self-care things. You can't do the self-care when you have a baby. Right. You just don't have time, especially if you don't have family in town to help you or the means to have a babysitter.
That shame has to compound because now you're dealing with, oh, I should be going through this golden period with my baby.
Yep.
I'm in love with my baby and I'm pregnant. I should be enjoying my pregnancy and have the pregnant glow.
Yep.
And you're not feeling any of that.
No. You're feeling sweatpants in the closet. Like, I just want to hide with a hoodie over my head.
And you also, I can't imagine, like, you feeling depressed is not the priority, right? Keeping the baby alive.
Exactly.
That's the priority.
Exactly.
Right? So, like, how can you self-care? Because you self-caring is being selfish.
Yeah, and you have to feel like shit about yourself even for wanting to self-care at that moment.
Yeah.
And you might not even know. You don't know how to self-care anymore.
Right.
You know, you don't even have time to think about
because you haven't slept
your
in 13
feelings.
Months.
Exactly. You just...
Yeah.
Oh, God.
You got to laugh about it, Maggie.
Otherwise, if you don't laugh, you cry.
Well, and it's interesting, the hormonal component, too, that you bring up, because I was reading something recently. So the birth control pill, basically on a fundamental level, the way it works is it tricks your body into thinking you're pregnant. And there's a lot of studies coming out linking it to depression now. Isn't yet recognized by the FDA, but the statistics with postpartum depression are 1 in 7 women experience postpartum depression.
Yep.
So if you think about that, if there's a comparable thing, it's not a majority of women who are on the pill, but maybe like 1 in 7 will experience that kind of depression.
Ding, ding, ding.
Mm.
And other weird things that go along with it. And I won't get into this because this isn't an episode on the pill. But other things that I found interesting with those hormonal changes is the type of men that a woman's attracted to will change while they're on the pill. Yeah, women become sometimes less satisfied with their partner if they met their partner before they were on the pill and then go on their pill, and vice versa. Yeah, like even things as like women who love the smell of their partner before going on the pill, now that the smell that they love, that like natural musk and pheromones and whatever, they now find rancid. And it's like a gross smell to them.
This is the thing that really fucks us, right? Is because we're still like figuring out all of this science. We're making these discoveries, right? And this progress, and we discover things like the pill. Right, and we're like, look at this amazing discovery we've made, and we don't know any of the side effects, any of the long-term repercussions. Right?
Can I sidebar on the pill real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Please do.
We sidebar all the time.
Let's have a just quick sidebar. So I was on just like the regular orthotricycline for like all of my 20s, right? And then I got prescribed the generic version of that, and I started getting sick all the time, like allergies and postnasal drip, and it would turn into bronchitis. It would turn into walking pneumonia. And I go to my doctor. I'm like, there's nothing different. Could it be this new pill? No. I'm going to send you to an allergist. I go to the allergist. They check all these things. Could it be this new pill? No. I'm going to send you to an ENT. All of these male doctors, by the way. I'm going to send you to an ENT. ENT, could it be the pill? No. We should do surgery. Okay, I'm going to hold off on that. I go back to my OB a year later. I've been on antibiotics 6 times at this point for bronchitis, walking pneumonia, sinus infections that kept happening. I go back to my OB. I'm like, could it be the pill? And she said, I mean, I'm not going to say no. And I said, all right, that's enough. That's all you got to say. Like, put me back on the other stuff. And 2 weeks later, completely done. Completely better.
Wow.
Completely gone.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, we are fundamentally just a big ball of chemicals. And you go in and you mess with any of those, and there's going to be a cascade of effects.
Yeah.
And it won't affect everybody the same. You know, like you and another woman could go on the generic, be fine.
Yep.
You know? But for you, boom.
Right.
All those effects.
And I called my doctors and I'm like, hey, by the way, I was allergic to something in this. And do you think that's going to go into any study?
No.
Do you think they're going to use that in the future?
No, they'll be like, that woman was hysterical.
Yeah.
And if it was the 1950s, they would have given you a lobotomy.
Can you just send me to the south of France so I can get some fresh air and take a break?
With one of those, like, things wrapped around your head.
Right.
You know, like I don't know. They had these like scarf things that were wrapped
little
around. Don't you judge me.
I'm judging you so hard right now.
So you touched upon an interesting thing. So
Yeah.
you were mentioning how like you mentioned to all these male doctors, right? Who are just kind of like brushing it off, brushing off your physical pain, your illness. When you actually started talking with someone about postpartum depression, was the experience similar? Did anyone ever be like, you just have to, woman up. You just have to be like, look, you're a mom now. You got to like deal with it. You just like, was there any of that attitude? I'm curious.
I didn't really talk about it a lot. I didn't, like I was saying, I didn't realize how bad I was struggling until I felt better. That's the thing. But when COVID, and I chalked it all up to COVID.
Right.
So I can't speak to that on other women's experiences because I'm sure that they do. I'm sure, especially in certain parts of the country. Too.
Sure.
It's a lot more of like, oh, you're fine. It's okay.
Well, there's a long history of male doctors specifically brushing off women's health problems.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And it, especially the judgment that comes from being a mother, not just from like other mothers, but just society in general and all the things that
internet culture. There's this whole thing of like the perfect mom. There's all these, Instagrams and TikToks and like, look what a wonderful mother I'm doing. And I'm having my kids do crafts and blah, blah, blah.
I mean, I have to give a shout out right now because I do have an amazing support system of a Facebook moms group. Call it the Mom Illuminati. You know who you are.
but none of us do.
Oh, they're coming for us, Adam. Them and the cartels.
Thanks for listening. Help us continue the conversation. Leave us a comment with your thoughts, experiences, or questions about mental health. Every opinion and viewpoint is valid. Just don't be a dick.
They literally gave me life during this period, and that was where I got a lot of realization of what was going on. And that was where everyone can air their grievances and are met with, babe, we got you. I know what you're going through. You are not crazy.
Yeah.
Like this is normal and we're going through it too. And everybody supports each other in that group. And I'm 100% like just amazed with the amount of like solidarity that I've found through that.
Yeah.
And I wish that it could just be everywhere.
Well, you and I talked before about this. One of the things that I think is just batshit. Hey, did you see what I did?
Nice. Oh, wait, that's
Ding,
the name
ding,
of the
ding.
show.
You need a sound effect for that.
Whichever of those noises you like best, please. No.
There's a poll in the comments.
Yeah. So, no, but we've talked about this before. Is that it's kind of fucking bonkers that women, while they're pregnant, and after they've had their baby, at no point during the process is there a mental health check-in that's built into it.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. I mean, you go for your 6-week checkup where your OB checks out your lady bits and sees how things are going there. They might at that point ask you some questions, but I feel like there might, again, I can't remember. You're all in a fog in a daze. They might have said, like, are you feeling any feelings of, wanting to hurt yourself or hurt the baby? And that's like, some people will say yes, maybe, but most people will say no. But what people don't realize is also you can develop postpartum depression a year after you've had your baby.
Sure.
I mean, I didn't know that until I had a baby, and your hormones, you're breastfeeding. If you're breastfeeding, that's going to change your hormones. So much can just change after having a baby.
The child's sleep cycle changes so radically, like every 6 weeks.
Yep.
And going back to your Facebook Illuminati group,
yes.
I mean, having people to talk to about all of this, not only does it allow you to, I don't mean to speak for you, but allows you to air your grievances, speak about, but you're also informing other people in the group.
100%.
When you have like new women join that Illuminati group, by the end of this episode, everyone's going to be like, oh, Maggie's in the Illuminati. But like you're informing, you're educating, right?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, now you're starting to build a database of information off of which you can start preparing women.
Yes.
And maybe, I mean, again, I don't plan to understand exactly how postpartum depression works,
right.
but maybe being more informed is going to help people.
Yes.
But when there's such a stigma about talking about your weakness, whether it be your physical fatigue from having to take care of your freaking child,
right.
or your mental depression after, giving birth to said child, like the more stigmas that are attached to that, the more shut down people become. The less talking occurs, the worse people feel, and the less information's out there, which is just so problematic.
It's so problematic. And again, I mean, I hate to generalize based on region. I'm from the South, and Brad is too. That's where we met. And I don't know if these conversations are being had as widely as they are where we live. But maybe they are. Maybe they are. I don't want to generalize, but I know growing up, I didn't see anybody talking about it.
Here's an interesting thing to follow up on that. You had to find this group through Facebook.
Yeah.
Like this wasn't a group of women that were just regularly meeting up and you were able to easily identify.
No, I mean, I was invited.
Yeah, exactly. That's the Illuminati work, man. I'm telling you. She's got this brand on her forehead. You guys
an envelope came under the door one day.
I think every part of this country has a different way of stigmatizing talking about your emotions and your feelings and any weakness you provide.
I talk about that, having been from the South. Like, I always joke, I'm like, Southern man don't need no mental health help. Because there are regions, and that's the one we're familiar with, but there are a lot of areas where you don't talk about this shit.
No. Yeah.
Oh, you just don't plain talk. Like we focus quite heavily, obviously, because we're two men, about how men deal with mental health and don't deal with mental health just by keeping their freaking mouths shut, right? Just by not talking about it, we're setting ourselves further and further back. And again, going back to one of your original points, it's like, you just had a baby. You're supposed to feel like on top of the world. Look, I'm a new mom. But if you're not talking about the other side of that, like, how detrimental is that, not only to your health, but like how your child, your partner, you know what I mean? Like, everyone, it's going to affect.
That's one thing I came across reading about postpartum depression is how much it can affect the bond between the mother and the child and the impact it can have on the child also.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much going on.
What are you saying, Brad? Did I screw my kid up?
Oh, yeah. Look, Maggie, I love your kids.
By the way, my son and I have an incredible bond. That is
because he's in the Illuminati as well.
I love him with the fire of 1,000 suns, and he knows it.
All I know is that Maggie's daughter loves me.
There you
She
go.
does love you.
So you did something right, Maggie. Great job.
Something right.
Yeah, as long as that kid knows who I am. But yeah, so like not only do you have those effects, in the extreme cases, and this is sad, but something I came across is so 1 in 7 women will experience postpartum depression. Out of that, 20% will attempt suicide. Out of that, another 5% will commit infanticide. And those are the stories that you see on the news,
Right.
where there's actually something I came across that's related called postpartum psychosis, where there was one woman, for instance, who didn't want her baby taken away from her at all at the hospital because she was convinced that if the baby left her sight, they were going to replace it with a robot.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
But so like you see these stories, the woman in Massachusetts from earlier this year who strangled her kids because she was hearing voices and she was convinced it would be better for them.
Yeah.
I mean, take just your general textbook psychosis diagnosis usually stems from a traumatic event.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay? You know, it makes sense that there's going to be births that are traumatic to women, that they are going to have some kind of repercussion later on. I don't know if you guys watched Fleischman is in Trouble.
Yeah,
I was just about to bring
But
that
like
up.
that's a perfect example of Claire Danes' character. She has this traumatic birth where, you know, the doctor just absolutely is completely
Assaults her.
Yeah, it's
her.
assault. Yeah.
It's assault, and she deals with it as best as she can. And it's not until her kids are kids when she
Yeah,
when
yeah. One of them's like 12, I
Yeah.
think, right?
Yeah, when she finally breaks down.
when she finally breaks down. I mean, if you don't seek treatment for it, it can just fester and present itself in such different ways. Every time I meet a new mom now, I take them by the arm. How are you? Look him deep in the
Blink
eyes.
if you
No,
need help.
really. How are you? And if you say you're okay, then you're full of shit.
You know, trauma. Like trauma. That's the word that we keep harping back to, right? Like we don't talk about our trauma. It doesn't matter if we're talking about something you experienced when you were a child, giving birth to a child as an adult. Like I've been taught over the years that if you cannot talk about your trauma, you're actually stronger.
Right.
Than
Yeah.
other people,
Right.
right? If you can just man up, woman up, and be like, whatever, I had to breastfeed 2 children at the same time, while mowing the lawn. It's like you're a better
Smoking my
person.
pack of Marlboro.
Exactly, you're a better person than we are. You're
Who's
a better
the
person.
best at bottling up? Cool.
Yeah, it's I don't know, when you're talking motherhood also, again, you have that whole miracle of birth thing. I almost wonder if the origination of that, is
Sure,
that
buddy.
right? Okay. I make up a lot of words.
It's like origin story.
He's a writer. He
Yeah,
can make
yeah.
up words. It's fine.
Hey, Shakespeare made up a lot of shit. I can do it.
Yeah, Brad compared himself to Shakespeare
He
just
invented
then.
the word puke. No, but I almost wonder if that was some kind of originally supposed to be some kind of helpful thing for women.
Sure.
It's like, oh, you're going through this trauma. Think of it as this miracle. Think of it as this beautiful thing. And I think it's detrimental.
Toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity, yes.
I love that.
That's what that is,
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
We live in Los Angeles. You would not believe the amount of toxic positivity here.
Accurate statement.
Yeah, you try to tell somebody like, man, like I went through this thing and it was horrible, and they're like, oh, well, you just got to put a smile on your face,
You
and just believe that good things are going to happen.
Just either in an hour you can be in the mountains or at the beach. So I mean, you kind of live in paradise.
Yeah, I was holding my baby when my baby died. Well, they're a better place now, and at least you got to hold them.
And there's a farmer's
yeah.
market on Tuesdays at the mall. So I think you're belief.
Have you tried getting a kitten?
Right? You know what? Quinoa. I bet you quinoa would fix it.
Quinoa would
Quinoa.
help. Fuck you.
I think one of the things also that isn't discussed a lot is having postpartum affects the partners too, man.
Sure.
Like I might be going through the hormonal issues and having the baby and everything, but it affects both partners. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like,
No. Well,
I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about that.
We've talked before about how much depression in the media, but mainly the depression affects your spouse, affects your partner, because they don't know what you're going through. They have no idea. They just see you become withdrawn, you become, angry, you do these things. And now you introduce a child into the situation. And it's like, why aren't you doing the things my mother did? Why aren't you doing the things that I see mothers do on TV? You know, and I got to work my job, and you know, aren't you going to be with the baby, and yada yada, and it's got to be frustrating and nerve wracking. And on the flip side of that, though, because we don't talk about this and people aren't educated about this, the partner in an ideal world would provide more support in that situation. They would be able to see, like, you're going through something.
Right.
You know, and I want to be there for you. But we don't have that education. We don't talk about that. You know, so it's confusion. It's just like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. Like, you know, is it that hard breastfeeding? I don't know, you know. Here, let me put the kid on my nipple and see what happens.
And again, we've normalized a lot of these issues that women will experience. Like, you know what? She's just sleep deprived. You know, it's just going to take a little bit. She'll get over it. She'll, you know, even once you normalize it, you as the partner have to sit there and like, well, wait a minute. Is this just it's not a normal behavior? It's not, or is it? It's got to be extremely confusing. I do not have children, by the way. I can only equate it to how my partner and I try and help each other through bad phases, and how Mandy has to deal with my depression and my bipolar. And she can only do the best she can based on the knowledge I can provide her. And because I don't know how to fully talk about my bipolar, that's a breakdown in communication. Right. And so now, not only do you have to figure out how to talk about your postpartum depression, but now you also have to talk about it while you're sleep deprived and you've never conversed about it with your partner before. And by the way, they might be going through some stuff.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, that's what I was saying. Like, it's your partner's going through stuff too when a new baby comes in. Like,
that happen in the man.
Yeah.
My they've tracked how estrogen like jumps up in a new father as part of the bonding process with the child. And I remember when my oldest son was a baby, and I'm sitting on the couch with him watching some like dipshit commercial of something on TV. I don't even remember what it was. And this like, you know, car commercial or whatever. And, he got her a car for Christmas. That's so heartwarming. And I'm like, like, you know, because your estrogen just like shoots through the roof. So, you know, you've got those hormonal changes.
Sure, blame it all on the estrogen, Brad. Yeah, it's the estrogen.
It was a touching commercial.
It's okay to cry.
It was an Audi. And he got the big. I don't even know where you get those bows.
Yeah. Can you imagine, by the way, another sidebar, your partner being like, "Come outside. Guess what I got you for Christmas? You bought a fucking car without talking to me. You bought a car, an Audi? That's an $80,000 car."
Yeah. Yeah. I was manic when I did it.
Okay. By the way, Audi, we're looking for sponsorship if you want to get on.
Bought a Porsche while I was manic. Don't judge me. Well, and also, every child is different, too. So my first son, for, the first 6 months of his life, wanted nothing to do with me. He was glued to my wife. So even if I wanted to help, like, he would just bawl his head off.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's how I was with my son. And that's real hard.
Yeah, so even if your partner's like, babe, let me take the kids so you can go get some sleep. You're not sleeping because that kid's crying his ass off in the other room. You know.
Now, when you had your second child, was it did you see a similar pattern there, or was it?
No, it was actually very different. So my first trimester with her was the really dark perinatal depression, and then the clouds lifted, and it just kind of, the hormones evened out somehow. I started exercising, which I didn't do during my first pregnancy.
Interesting, yeah.
Huge difference.
Were you on Lexapro at the time?
No. I didn't get on that until she was 1 and he was 3.
Okay.
So, I mean, it took a long time to realize that I had anxiety and depression issues. And no, but with her, things were much better. Like, and I realized just how much getting out and doing physical fitness and getting those natural dopamine levels up. I mean, it really, really was a game changer. And then I had a completely different birth, had the birth that I wanted with him, with her, unmedicated birth. I was waiting to get, I literally was getting interviewed by the anesthesiologist right before they gave me the epidural, they have to ask you a bunch of questions. And one is like, do you feel like you have to push? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, girl, you're not getting this. You're not getting an epidural.
Damn it, I failed the test.
Oh, you said push. I'm sorry. I thought you said
I feel like you need
tush.
to pull. And so I had a completely unmedicated birth with my daughter, and it was glorious. It was amazing. And I had all the feels there. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't traumatic to me. Like, that was what felt the most just like, oh, this is lovely. I had all the natural chemicals. Like, people talk about when you have an unmedicated birth, you have just this huge rush of just feeling high.
Really?
After you give birth. Yeah, man. It was incredible. And you just have this baby, and then you do. And I did have that moment with her where I was just like, whoa, like, we are one. Wow. And it was beautiful. And you know, I mean, this is a little like vulnerable to put out there on the podcast, but I am coming to terms with the fact that I didn't feel that with the first one. And it makes me sad because I felt that with her and not with him, but I have this incredible bond with him now. Sure. And I mean, even as he got older, like, our bond was just, you know, I made really, it was really important to me that our bond with my bond with my son stayed super strong, even though the new baby was coming in. So, like, I did a lot of preparation. I would make sure to, like, have special time with him, even though she was a newborn, and my husband could take the newborn, and I would go have Mama Alton time. And I think I just want to say, like, the births were so different, and therefore, after, it was so different too, because she was such a different baby. She wasn't glommed onto me like he was. I was able to have that sense of autonomy, whereas before, you just feel touched out. You know, you just have a baby on you all the time. Sure. And you don't feel like you have your own personhood. So with her, she would let my husband take her. She would let, you know, pass her around the kitchen, and she was happy. She was fine. So that was a lot easier. Which I think, you know, has to do with it. And then the anxiety was definitely there. It was more anxiety at that point, like less depression, but more anxiety. And then, like I said, I started COVID, and and that was when I ended up getting on Lexapro and realizing, like, oh, okay, this was a much deeper thing that I've been struggling with than I realized.
Everyone who's lost someone to COVID, there's a class action lawsuit against them.
Now, when you started Lexapro,
yeah.
like, what was that like? When someone came to you and was like, you know what, I think you should try this medication.
Mm-hmm.
Did it feel like like a relief? Was it like, did you feel almost like you were copping out? Like, how did you feel?
I had gone through things situationally through my 20s and early 30s where I had periods of depression, mm-hmm. and I almost, you know, talked to a psychiatrist. I was like, I'm not okay, but I felt that shame that, you know, coming from the South, you don't get on medication, you know. I just like, I ended up not doing it, and I worked myself through it.
Right, yeah.
I don't need it.
You fixed it.
I fixed myself.
And then to compound that, you come to LA where everyone's like, oh, you know, just chew some ginger and do some yoga.
Well, and the other bitch of it is, like, you're an actress, right? So you're supposed to walk into these rooms being like carefree.
Yeah.
You know, what do you need me to do? Cool, awesome, I'm happy. Let me make some jokes. I'll see you later.
You know what's amazing, though? When I finally got on Lexapro, so one of my things that I always struggled with was crying in a scene. Like, as an actress, I got on Lexapro, and now it's like, boom. It's like
no problem.
It's crazy because my anxiety is gone about it. You know, I'd have anxiety about needing to cry, and now I'm like, whatever, it'll come. And it just took the edge off. It's been life-changing. Yeah. It's been absolutely life-changing once I got on it.
Now, do you think if you had sought help and got diagnosed before you were pregnant that you would have experienced the same symptoms?
That's a great question. Probably not.
Yeah.
Really?
Probably not. No, I don't think so. And that's another thing that I want to bring up to to anyone listening who may be pregnant and going through this, there are still options even when you're pregnant if you're going through depression or anxiety. Like, a lot of people don't want to take medication while they're pregnant. There are options. There are some medications that are safe for pregnancy. So I just want to put that out there. Like, just seek help if you think that might be the case.
Well, I think there's also a lot of validity in doing mental, like you said, mental checkups. Like if you're going to get pregnant and you're planning on getting pregnant, some people don't plan and it just happens. And yay! But if you're planning on getting pregnant, you go and you see your OBGYN. You start seeing medical professionals. Why wouldn't you do the same thing with a mental health professional?
100%.
Right? Just to be like, hey, look, I'm going to have a kid, or I'm planning on having a kid with my partner.
Yeah.
Can we just talk for a bit? And then can you imagine what would be discovered?
I'm going to one-up you there, even doing the individual, but you and your partner should also be going to talk to somebody of how you as a couple can prepare for having a child.
Yeah. Totally.
Because like you said, I mean, it's weird to talk about it this way, but even if everything goes right, it is a traumatic event. It upends your life.
Yeah.
Everything changes.
100%.
The relationship with your partner changes. You are no longer husband and wife. You're no longer boyfriend and girlfriend. You are now working a job together, trying to keep this little thing alive.
Yep. Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. And most women I know go through an identity crisis of some sort after they have a kid.
Sure.
Because
why
wouldn't you?
Right. I mean, it's fascinating to me how, especially from a female point of view, you have spent your entire life building up who you are and discovering who you are, right? And then if you have a child, a piece of you is now out there into the world. That piece, maybe a foundational building block type of thing, is now out there into the world. And now you're creating your person all over again with a baby on your hip.
Yeah.
And you're rediscovering who you are and what you need, and your wants and your needs are going to probably be different than they obviously were in your 20s, right? Let alone your 30s or when you first met your partner.
Yeah.
And to think that you are going to easily transition from one to the next is an arrogance that is beyond, guy, that's not how it works.
Oh, I've talked to people who were like, yeah, I think I'll probably quit my job the first year the baby's here, and then I'll go back to work. And it's like, for the first 4 years of that kid's life, that is your job 24/7.
Yeah.
You have no idea what you're about to get into.
I always say, any of my friends that have a kid under the age of 5, you don't need to explain shit to me ever. You can literally just be like, "Bleh," and I'm like, got it. Don't worry about it. Call you later. Yeah, it's just that's it. That's it.
Because you don't until they start school. And they're out of your fucking face for several hours a day. I love my children with all my heart.
The ones that are left.
The ones that are left. The other ones have been gone so long, I think I've forgotten their names.
Oh, wait, you named them?
I know there was a Jose. But yeah, once they hit school and you can get rid of them for a few hours a day and they're kind of going to bed on their own and sleeping through the night and stuff, you start gaining some of your life back. You start being able to say, oh, I can go hiking again. I can go out with friends on a Thursday night. I can do these things again. But that takes a long time to get back there.
Sure.
And so during that period, especially if you have an active social life, your entire life's upended. And I'm talking about this as a father. If you're having to breastfeed this little bastard,
oh my God, yeah.
Oh man, no. I mean, you're on a schedule that is not your own, and I can remember to this day so vividly. It was 2 weeks after my son was born, and it was the first time. It takes you 2 weeks to get the okay to drive.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. I guess, in case of hemorrhaging or whatever. I don't
Sure,
know.
yeah.
I'm sure there's some medical reason. But you're supposed to wait 2 weeks until you drive. And so I remember my husband came home from work and I was like, I'm going to Target. And I gave him the baby, and I can just remember getting on the 101. And I'm going north. And I was like, I could keep going all the way to San Francisco.
Stop me. No one could stop me.
And then walking around Target just in a daze, What's my name? I don't bath bombs. I need a face mask. Crazy.
What happened to Maggie? She ended up in an ashram. I don't know.
She might still be in Target. I don't know if she ever left.
I live here now.
24/7. There's, they sell bedding. I'm sure there's a bed.
Now I should have gone to IKEA.
Yeah. You could live on those meatballs.
Yeah, seriously.
Amen.
I could live on those meatballs. I just want to, again, say thank you so much for talking with us about this. And I would personally love to have you back to talk about this even more.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
There's just too much to cover in
It's
one
a lot.
episode. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. We've said this before, and we'll say it again about every single topic that we talk about. If you are experiencing anything that we've touched upon today, please find your own Illuminati group who you can talk to, because there are people out there going through the same exact shit you're going through.
Absolutely.
And if you're having an emergency, if you're having thoughts of hurting yourself or hurting your child, call 911 immediately. It's not your fault. It's not your problem. They won't take your baby away. But get help immediately.
100%.
Maggie, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I love you.
I love you.